Three friends boarded Disney's Galactic Starcruiser to seek their destiny and emerged as heroes of the Halcyon. Welcome to Heroes of the Halcyon, the best, and still to the best of my knowledge, only Galactic Starcruiser Superfan podcast on the interwebs. I'm Galactic Starcruiser Superfan Drew, and with me are...
Starcruiser Superfan Christine.
And Starcruiser Superfan Martin.
Today's episode is a fun one. We don't have an interview this week because we're kind of between lining people up. We've got some excellent ones coming in the future, and we're super excited for you to hear. But today, you get to listen to us. Martin, what are we going to talk about today?
Boy, we got listener emails. We got an absolute avalanche of listener emails this past week. We even had some fun reviews that we're going to quick chat about the podcast. But the main topic of our episode this week is going to be things we wish we knew before we got on Galactic Starcruiser. And it's not just what we wish we knew. We've actually been in communication with some cast members who work on the Halcyon, and they sent us things that they wish people knew before they got on their Galactic Starcruiser adventure. Let's take it away.
Well, this week we received a ton of listener email. It was awesome. Everybody seemed to be taking advantage of the offer that we had on Instagram and Twitter to be able to do an action figure style card back for them. And the pictures that we got were phenomenal. We got pictures from some of the cast members, which was really cool. But a lot of families and a lot of groups that went together on the Halcyon. Yeah, they were amazing.
I think we did over, 40 just this week for folks.
It's very kind of you to say we, Martin, since you're the person doing the work, but thank you for giving Christine and I credit.
Hey, I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. One thing that's interesting about getting so many people's, Starcruiser photos, and a lot of these were CSL pictures, the paid photo experience. And it really gives me a lot of ideas for the three of us for our next voyage, how to really kind of maximize our CSL time. Because our first voyage, our CSL was cool, but boy, comparing to what I'm seeing folks sending, my gosh, we have seen some incredible pictures this past week.
So what's one location that we were not in that you like where you're like, excuse me, CSL person, I need to start this place?
Specifically, the bridge. I mean, we did our CSL, we'll get into this a little bit later, but we did our CSL at a time where they were doing bridge training, so we weren't allowed into the bridge at that time. Another great photo we got was from Emily, who works in the Chandrilla Starline actual store on board the Halcyon, and a really fun picture with her and just the merchandise. I don't know if I'd want to spend our valuable CSL time in the merch store, but it's such a fun picture.
Sure.
That was really great. And then another, I believe this was Sierra, got a great shot in the atrium. We didn't get to shoot in the atrium.
The atrium shot, I didn't see that one. Did she have the background in nice depth of field so it was blurry? And
They did. It was a really good shot, but you could tell that it wasn't a time when the atrium was empty. Just the photographer really did a good job of shooting upward, so you could really get a good shot with just her in it. But
this was a crew member shot?
This was a crew member
Nice,
shot, and it was absolutely sensational. But then we had a couple others. I believe it was Danny and Lindsay had shots inside the lightsaber training room, the actual lightsaber dojo. Really cool shots, and we didn't get to shoot there either. But both of those shots were sensational. So I will say for my next CSL, I'm going to make sure lightsaber dojo and the bridge for sure. I mean,
luckily that's not a huge walk along the ship, so
Right.
And this was one that wasn't a cast member. This is someone that hasn't even been on board the Halcyon yet. But a listener named Sarah sent a picture of her in full makeup and the Twi'lek prosthetic. She was a Twi'lek Jedi character. That was a lot of fun, and her card back turned out awesome. So it's so much fun seeing people have as much fun as we did.
How about you, Christine? Were there any favorites that you had that you saw Martin sending out?
Yeah, we did have one person that sent us in. His name was Tyler. I think that's one of your favorites too. And we ended up doing card back for him, and then for his two kids that came with him.
Nice, that's awesome.
And the pictures of the kids were
gosh,
adorable. So yeah, I bet that was really fun when Dad got an opportunity to surprise the kid with the card backs.
The other ones that I think are amazing were some of the ones we sent out, some of the influencers that we talked to. Martin and Christine, you met some of these people at Star Wars Celebration. Dano's shot turned out really well. He was a very early card back that you did. Another one that I thought was spectacular is the recent one you did with Sarah Mack, her Betty Bantha character that she did at Star Wars Celebration. I just love the way
What a
turned
fun
out.
character. That one turned out great. So it's been a lot of fun, but we're actually extending this offer. Just the response is so great. People seem to love it. I love doing it for you. So keep them coming. Let's see some photos.
As long as you don't expect them in 10 minutes after you send the email. It does take Martin a little bit of time. You're very generous with your time, Martin, so I appreciate it on behalf of Christine and I, of course. But, when you send them out, as long as you get it back within a week or so, Martin can get the turnaround done pretty quick.
And here's a tip for anyone that wants to get the best possible, card back, shot, is that please take a wide photo. Really extreme close-ups don't work well, and please send a high-resolution photo. We got a couple postage stamp JPEGs that we kind of had to ask if we had anything higher resolution. So the higher resolution, the better. The wider the shot, the better. But no matter what, send it in. It's a great memory of your voyage.
And make sure to send those photos to heroesofthehalcyon@gmail.com. And because we've had such a great response to our card back offer, make sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode and hear what our next offer is going to be.
So one of the fun things about doing the podcast is we're getting reviews on Apple Podcast, which, not going to lie, it's kind of fun to see.
Is my mom online?
Your mom is not there yet, wow, that just brings up all sorts of mom jokes that I just won't go into. But I do want to read a couple that I think are pretty fun. So the first one is from somebody named Serenity Nova, which is the coolest name ever, after Drew, of course. But this is what she had to say. I read about this podcast on the Galactic Starcruiser Facebook group and decided to check them out. I'm glad I did. If you've been aboard the Halcyon and are now going through withdrawal, or if you haven't been but you're wondering what all the fuss is about, I highly recommend Heroes of the Halcyon. Martin, Christine, and Drew are very personable and easy to listen to, and their joy in their experiences aboard the Halcyon really comes through. Check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Aw,
We aim to please, Serenity.
Great, that was awesome. So here's the second one. So this one is sent in by Peas in a Podcast. This is somebody you obviously met at Star Wars Celebration. It says, met Martin and Christine at Star Wars Celebration 2022. That's how I figured it out. They are kind and genuine and so passionate about sharing their love of the Halcyon experience. Finally got to listen in, and I'm really enjoying all three hosts for their authenticity, thoughtful POVs, and fun. Headed to the Halcyon in September, and this podcast is helping to prepare our group of experienced D&D players and Star Wars fans for the best trip ever.
That's awesome.
That's Ann Richmond from Hearthsinger Games.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, anybody that's into D&D should really, really enjoy.
I subscribed after you guys mentioned to her, and I've
Yeah.
enjoyed it because I'm an experienced D&D player, so I'm learning some stuff, which is fun.
Well, we've actually asked her to be on the show after her upcoming Starcruiser voyage, and that's going to be fascinating to see the perspective from someone who is a professional gamer. I can't wait.
So these reviews are super helpful. Thanks for leaving them for us. If you'd like to help the show, you listener, if you're wondering who I'm talking to you right now. Go out to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also leave reviews on other podcast apps of your choice, like Spotify or Amazon Music. Those are really helpful for us. They help the algorithm find this podcast and point it out to other people who might be interested to listen.
Captain Keevan wants you to. And for the main topic of our episode today, as the title of the episode suggests, it's things we wish we knew before we went on Galactic Starcruiser. It's really tips. It's not so much tricks, but tips to help you get the most of your voyage, whether it's your first voyage or your returning voyage. But Christine, can you start us off with our first things you wish you knew?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we experienced not only when we got on Starcruiser, but before we even got to Starcruiser, was FOMO, the fear of missing out. It's real. It's scary. You have to get through it. The best way to enjoy your voyage is really just take a deep breath as soon as you get on the ship and just relax. Absorb the atmosphere, walk around the ship, take advantage of the crew members, talk to them. There's cast members to talk to. Go get a drink in the sublight lounge, hang out at the atrium, and just absorb your environment. Take a minute to realize where you are. I mean, this is an experience that so few people are going to be able to enjoy. Make sure that you don't miss it because you're so focused on what the other things are that you think you're missing.
Definitely, Christine. You know, Jerry Seinfeld has a great joke where he says, it's not so much what's on TV, but men want the remote because it's what else might be on the TV. When I went on the voyage, I was trying to force something to happen. when I got on, I knew a certain moment because it had been spoiled for me. So my FOMO said, I want to do this no matter what. So I was prancing up and down deck 4 to deck 5. I even went up to deck 7 at one point. I'm just walking all over trying to make something happen rather than doing what you're talking about, which is kind of let the experience happen to me. And that's something that I wish I had had in mind before I went. So I think you stated it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, the entire ship is so filled with shiny things that it's so easy to just splinter off in a million different things. Pick one.
I remember on our first voyage, at one point, I was prancing around so much that a couple of other guys who were also in costume to kind of the same level we were, I think they thought that maybe I knew something because I kept walking around. And they came up to me and they in character, they were saying, so what do you hear is cool about the Halcyon? And I was like, I don't know what to say to you guys. But I eventually said, well, I understand that the real action is in the climate simulator. And they turned around and went to the climate simulator. And I was like, where did I just send them? And they were probably like, what the heck is this guy doing, sending me down here to the climate simulator? But again, we were all trying to make something happen rather than waiting for the story to happen to us.
I mean, we didn't know exactly what to expect because we've been very good about avoiding spoilers as much as possible. So even when we got on board and we were kind of standing around waiting for muster to happen, one of the cast members started talking to me, and I thought, oh, just a friendly other Star Wars fan here on the ship, and didn't even put it together that he was a cast member. Once I realized that the conversation with the cast members was going to flow so easily that it wasn't going to be forced, that you weren't going to be on stage, that you weren't going to be, it all seemed to flow from there. It all just relaxed at that point, and just whatever happened, happened.
But one of the biggest tips is if you think that there's a story moment you're missing, or if you think that you're not on a story path that you want to be on, don't think about it. Go to a crew member. Talk to them. They're there to help you, and that's something that I actually wish I had done earlier. There was a couple beats in the story that I missed because I just didn't raise my hand early enough and say, can I switch? Can you move me around? They could do a lot of things behind the scenes to kind of pull strings to put you on a path that you're interested in.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll pull the strings right away, but they might guide you saying, hey, have you had a drink in the Sublight Lounge? Or have you... So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to talk to a crew member in blue, or as I like to call them, a blue member.
Ooh, blue, I like it. That's awesome. Well, and in a completely different topic, to kind of jump to a different thing, like character interactions, something that really helped us as a group, there was, the three of us, and then Drew, your son Zach was with us as well, is we took different paths, at different points. The three of us were very heavy on the smuggler path, and Zach was very much first order. But the more people that are in your group that kind of splinter off in different directions, it really helps because you get more storylines talking to the other people in your group. Things that they did that you didn't get to see, you get clued in on. And, we actually got to see more endings than we would have, naturally, because, we talked to Zach. Zach talked to, Christine. Christine talked to Drew. And, we got kind of clued in on where is everyone in these stories. And because of that, because it wasn't just me and the storylines I, saw naturally, we got a broader scope of the bigger overlying story. So the more people you go with, the better. And if they go in different directions, storyline-wise, that can be to your advantage as well.
It ends up being great dinner conversation.
Oh, it does.
What did you do today? What did you see on Batu? Who asked you to do what?
I didn't get to do that. That's awesome. Sure.
Can we rewind the day? But there's so many things I learned because of talking with the other people that the next time I go, I'm really going to be kind of clued in on what do I really want that next experience to be.
Sure, and if you're not able to go again in the future, by having a multiple point of view, you can all kind of share the adventure and share the story with one another and kind of learn the overall picture. That's pretty cool.
Another thing as far as character interactions is I really do believe the three of us went very deep into character creation. We went very deep into cosplay. I mean, Christine had full makeup on. Your character was head to toe. Captain Maleficent, a Twi'lek Maleficent mashup that was just visually stunning, and we all had backstories. Really, I'm all in favor of creating backstories. I mean, my character was Jorg Sakul, Galaxy famous, Holovid director. But really, I believe that the backstories that people create for their characters it's not something that really comes into play with other people. It's mostly just internally how to inform your character decisions. Very few people ever like sit down and relate their backstory to other folks. But it's really helpful. It really did inform my decisions as to what my character would do, because I knew where had my character come from. What was my character's motivations in being at Galactic Starcruiser at that moment. So, but I do believe that the backstory, it's mostly internal. I don't believe that it's something that really comes into play story-wise.
Yeah, and one thing I've told both of you guys, and if I've repeated it before in other previous episodes, I apologize, but I had a whole backstory, and at one point, Sammy came up and said, "So what's your name?" And I said, "I'm Zorn Vox, and I'm from the planet blah, 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 blah." And I gave him my whole spiel, which was kind of ridiculous, because immediately he was like, "Okay, kid, I got to go see somebody else." But the other thing about it was it made it harder for Sammy to remember me if I just said, "I'm Zoran." That's all he needed to know. I think it would have helped me a little bit better. So again, the backstory is great. Like the great actors always write a backstory for their character, so it informs their decisions and their acting method. That's great. It's not critical, but it's definitely helpful.
It was fun.
I will say, Martin, that it's not. It definitely helps if you're able to make as much detail as you want. It certainly makes it a lot of fun because you get to plan it well ahead of the cruise or the voyage. But if you're a person who doesn't like to make a character and you really don't want to make that, that's not critical. You can still very much take part in the story and take part in the voyage by just observing and standing back. You don't have to go up to the character and introduce yourself if you don't want to. You can observe and be a part of the story as it happens around you, and you'll have just as much fun as most people. So don't think that you have to make the backstory or make the huge character or do all that stuff. Do it if you like to, but don't think that it's imperative.
Yeah, there was a lot of folks that their cosplay was basically Jedi robe, and they had a blast.
Yeah, there were also people whose whose costume was Dad from Tallahassee. So yeah,
it really did kind of the gamut of people, how much time and effort they put into character creation. But go with your comfort level. But for us, I believe it paid off dividends with the crew. I believe our characters were more memorable. I believe we did get some, better interactions simply because, we showed an investment to them in the experience. I believe that's a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, and I don't mean to turn this into counterpoint, because you are 100% correct. If we weren't dressed in costumes to the degree that we were dressed, some of those earlier interactions that we had wouldn't have happened, because when you show up dressed to play, you're going to play. But I do want to make sure people, that if like my wife, who doesn't listen to this podcast, but if you did, I love you, honey. My wife would sooner jump off a bridge than make a giant character and make, go to the depths that we went to. She wouldn't have gotten talked to right away, but that would have been just fine for her.
Right.
Yeah, really. You do not need to have any kind of backstory or character. You could literally go just as yourself and have an amazing time.
But if you're teetering on the edge of whether you should or you shouldn't, the answer is you should. This is the first time that first time I've ever cosplayed, and I was nervous about doing it, but had hoped that it would kind of be a safe place to do it. Because if not there, where? I mean, everybody's there to enjoy Star Wars. Everybody there's got the same motivation, and you assume everybody there has got their own focus, and it's not on you. So if you're teetering on the edge, definitely teeter to yes.
I love it. That needs to be on a t-shirt. Teeter to yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
But something else that really does matter with your character interactions with the cast is the data pad that you're given or that you use on your phone. It's got the familiarity level with each one of the named characters on board the ship. And really, the more time you spend with these characters, no matter what you're spending your time doing, builds up your familiarity meter. And then there's also a trust meter as to how much does this person trust you. So you can spend a lot of time with a character and have a 100% familiarity rating and have a 0% trust rating. The First Order officer, I never assisted that First Order officer in any way, shape, or form, but it was always in his face. Huge familiarity, zero trust. But you do have to kind of pay attention. The real tip here is don't ignore the things that are coming across your data pad. If you're given a mission or asked a question, answer it, because every question you answer unlocks other things. Every mission you complete unlocks some new mission path or branch. So truly, spend as much time you can with the characters and spend as much time as you can answering the things on your data pad. Don't let those things sit, or you could miss out some different story points.
And something I will add to that, Martin, is one of the things we suspect. We don't have an inside track. I certainly hope over the coming months when we do more episodes that we can actually talk to somebody about this. But we suspect, based on our observations of people on the Voyage, that just being in the presence of one of the characters helped your familiarity rating. I don't know if it's a man in the booth upstairs noticing who's around Sammy or who's hanging around Captain Keevan. I think that there might be something either with your phone, the devices that are registered in your name, or your NFC bands on your Magic Bands. I believe there's some technology that allows the ship, or I should say the program that runs the ship, to know that you're with a character, and that helps boost your familiarity. I think that was something that we noticed.
It definitely seemed that way. And really, the last point I'd have, as far as like the character interaction, it's not so much specific to one character, but scan everything with your Magic Band. Everything. You're given a special Magic Band when you go to Starcruiser. Use it. Scan every droid, scan every station, scan every single thing you can. Because we actually did not do that our first voyage, and we found out later that we could have scanned this, we could have scanned that, and gotten a couple extra missions that we didn't. So just as something we'll know for the second trip, scan everything.
And piggybacking on that, Martin, I would also say, I'm looking at a Magic Band here. You've got one here in front of us. It's got a pretty standard symbol. It's just, when you get your Magic Band, you'll see what it looks like. Because Drew has to remember that podcasting is not a visual medium. But in any case, the symbol is what you pass. So I'm envisioning people just walking around waving their Magic Bands in the air. You have to scan certain scan points. You'll see them on the terminals. There's also one on SK620, the droid that's walking around. There's actually a thing you can scan into. I don't know that there's one on any other characters that I saw, but the doors you might want to get into connect with those.
It knows where you've been.
Right.
It knows everything. If you've scanned into the engineering room, it knows that. The atrium or the climate simulator, it knows that. The lightsaber dojo.
So when you see that symbol, slap that Magic Band on it like it did something wrong.
Yeah. And one last thing on this particular point, it's not so much character interactions, but something that we never got to do. We never once sat at a holo sabacc table in the Sublight Lounge. It was always 100% filled. So boy, I'll tell you that if you're not in the middle of a mission, specific task at that moment, and you see an empty seat at the holo sabacc table in the Sublight Lounge, sit down and play. You may not get that chance again.
So for this next group of tips, I want to talk about managing your time when you're on the Galactic Starcruiser. But on the ship, there's a number of experiences that happen that aren't really keyed off of the data pad. They're not something that a crew member will tell you. They're experiences. I like to think of them as atrium experiences that kind of happen when you're in the middle of some of the other activities that they've planned on the ship. Remember that the Galactic Starcruiser is themed as a cruise in space, and as such, they have things like space bingo, and they have the fashion
line
show.
dancing.
They have line dancing, exactly. These are there because they're trying to fit the theme, but they're not critical to the story. You're not going to solve a story beat by playing space bingo. But during these events, around you, there are character interactions that are happening. These space bingo events, these atrium experiences, are used to mask some of those other storylines. If you see one of those happening, you see 10 people gathered around a certain character and they're walking around and you feel like you're going to miss out, here's the good news. You're not. Because in 10 minutes, that character is going to be done with this little experience and it's going to loop. So you'll see this character walking from, let's say, the merchandise shop to one of the exits. Well, go hang out in the Sublight Lounge or go downstairs to engineering, because in a few minutes, that character is probably going to show up and start that whole atrium experience over again, and you'll be able to join from the beginning. One of the most fun experiences I took part in, there was a character I happened to be seeing. He was by himself, just walking off, and I just joined him. I just started walking behind him, and he asked me my name. I remembered to just say Zoran, and we were off and running. I got to do that same experience that I had just witnessed when we were doing the fashion show. It happened again, and I got to take part in it. It was really cool.
And along that line, the really big, major kind of story beats are done twice in the evening, once during each dinner session. So if there's a big story beat that you missed, that you absolutely have to see, you might have to miss some of your dinner seating, but you can go see when it's performed the next time. So always keep that in mind, is the big story beats are performed twice.
So what I'm hearing
At
is
night.
no sleep and no eating.
Any
Okay.
questions?
I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
They have the blue milk in to-go cups. They actually do. That we're not kidding.
True.
Another thing that happens in the atrium is there's actually one of the story paths takes pretty much entirely in the atrium. There's a character, and you'll probably run into him very quick on your first voyage, who really never leaves the atrium, and they have a whole story around them that takes place just there in the atrium. It's available for you to join, just hang out, and you'll be a part of the story. So another thing that's important to keep in mind when managing your time is your time down at Galaxy's Edge. One thing I do want to talk about, is it Batu or Batu? I hear both. I don't know which one is right.
Batu, I believe, is correct.
I've started to say Batu because you guys do. So you know what? I'm going to say Batu the rest of this episode.
Well, Batu to you.
Exactly. The Batu missions are critical to the story. You'll get those missions when you go down to the planet's surface. They will key off of some of the experiences that you had on the first night. Those will feed over into missions that you can take place in. And one tip that I would have is do every single mission you can. I don't care if you've been to Batu 100 times before. It's still the same game. You're still doing the same translation, scanning, listening to transmissions. It's not changed a huge amount, but do all of the missions because they lead into the concluding missions that happen back on the ship. So if you want to have the most complete experience, do the missions on Batu.
Along that line is that, if you have the ability, if the opportunity presents itself, go to Galaxy's Edge for a day before you go to Galactic Starcruiser. If nothing else, just to familiarize yourself with how the Disney Play app works inside Galaxy's Edge. All of the scanning games, all of the range finding game, all of these things that work. We went to Galaxy's Edge on a trip before we went to Starcruiser solely to use the data pad, figure out exactly how all that worked. And I do believe that kind of gave us a leg up on the day when time was so critical that we didn't spend time trying to figure out how everything worked. We knew how everything worked. We were able to get right into the heart of the missions.
And if you have questions, don't be afraid to talk to a crew member. There's one, actually, I think there's probably at least two stationed at the exit from the ship. Mm-hmm. So just pat them on the shoulder, say, I'm having trouble with this. Can you give me a hand? And the final tip that I'm going to give under Manage Your Time is something that, hit me. Before we went on the voyage, I had heard that the first dinner was going to be a gala, going to be sort of a kind of a regalia. There was talk of it being sort of an opportunity to dress to impress. So I brought a whole costume, and I was ready to go, and I was going to change clothes between the first part of the mission, then change into my super cool space outfit. Yeah, I completely forgot about it because I was having so much fun doing missions. I also brought a costume for my second night because I was going to wear a different outfit in my native planet's garb. Remember that backstory we were talking about? I didn't wear it because I was too busy doing the missions. So if you're inclined to bring multiple outfits, first of all, I don't want to harsh your buzz. Knock yourself out. Just know that most likely you're probably not going to change. I may be putting my experiences on you, but I've heard other podcasters and other people on YouTube say exactly the same thing.
I've heard that repeatedly, that the pace doesn't allow you to stop and get changed. What are you going to miss in the time it takes, unless it's just a really fast costume change, but I've heard that multiple times from people. And
now we've circled all the way back to the beginning when we talked about FOMO. Because your fear of missing out is whenever you go to your room to change into your other costume.
Yep, exactly.
Don't do it. So we do know that there are crew members that do listen to the podcast. Thank you for doing so. And we did have an opportunity to ask some of them what they would suggest as far as tips for people who are doing their first voyage or second voyage or third voyage. As a crew member, they get to experience all of it. They get to see all of it, hear all of it. One of the things that they mentioned is when you first get on the ship, keep in mind that nothing really happens before muster. The storylines don't start until muster. So again, take the time to explore the ship. That's the time when most people are going to be focused on getting to their rooms and getting back, and kind of like what Drew said, racing up and down the stairs trying to find a cast member. Take the time to enjoy it and absorb. So that's straight from a crew member.
Yeah, I gotta say that's something that I wish I had known, because I went immediately into where's the storylines, where's the missions, and it kind of did I got into my own head a little too much, looking for something to happen. So again, nothing happens until muster, and that takes place 3 to 4 o'clock, the first afternoon. So you don't have to wait long. Enjoy the time until that happens.
The one thing I will say is be sure to scan into some of the consoles, maybe into the cargo hold, maybe into the engineering, because before muster there are some things that happen, just not really dedicated story beats.
Yeah, so as you're wandering, scan. We mentioned several times as we were talking that, make sure that you reach out to a crew member. The crew member is there to help you. But one thing that you do need to keep in mind is to be patient. Their job and their passion really is to help make sure that you have the best experience possible while you're on the ship. But it's not every issue is something that they can resolve at the snap of a finger. So give them an opportunity to try to help. Whether they help you, whether they have another crew member that helps them help you, just give them the opportunity to make it right, because that's their goal in the end. And they're very cognizant of the fact that you only have 45 hours on the ship, so they're going to expedite whatever they can to be able to help you and make sure that your voyage is the best one it can be.
One of the things that we haven't really had a full opportunity to talk about, we talked about it in our episode with Mike Celestino, but we actually had an event where Martin, I don't mean to call you out, Martin, but Martin left his keys in the safe. And we got to Disney Springs and Martin realized, oops, the keys that I'm going to need to drive the car home at the airport in Phoenix, those are locked in the safe in our room. So we reached out to a cast member, and they had somebody go to the room, get the keys, get them in a car, and send them over to Disney Springs. So
they weren't going to let us back on the ship.
Well, no, of course they can't, because that would break the immersion, which makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
But for them to go not just the extra mile, the extra parsec, some people might say.
Absolutely. I mean, they literally brought them to us at Disney Springs. So huge. They're the best in the business.
Yeah. And they'll go out of their way to make a memorable experience for you.
And make sure too that if you are talking to a crew member about an issue that you're trying to get resolved, be mindful of other passengers. Everybody is there on their own journey and maybe fully immersed in character, fully immersed in a story, and listen to you, ask about, needing extra pillows or an extra towel or about losing your keys. May break them out of the immersion. So just be mindful of that. You can always ask a crew member to step aside and have a quiet conversation and have them help you resolve your issue, whatever it might be.
There's the folks at guest services right in the atrium that are there for that express purpose.
Right.
Yeah. And whenever in doubt, if you don't want to break people out of the immersion, just put the word space in front of everything.
Ooh.
I would like a space pillow. I would like a space robe. Those are ways to stay in the Star Wars world.
I really want a space robe. Can we go on Etsy and get me a space robe?
We all want a space robe. And the last thing that I wanted to make sure to mention is remember that the cast members, the actors that are putting themselves out every day, every week, every month of the year, they are people too. And even though they've done an amazing job in world building in this Star Wars adventure, that there are quote unquote good guys and bad guys, it's not an opportunity to take out your frustration on the First Order. He's just there to try to help entertain and help move the story along. So just be mindful of your interactions with them. There's always an opportunity to joke and, kid, and they are fantastic about doing that with you. But keep in mind, if this was your job, you would not want to be heckled while you were on stage.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of videos that are really, I would actually say, borderline disrespectful to the person behind the character.
Yeah.
There's a line between funny, heckling and, jibing with someone, and then just straight up being disrespectful to this person.
Or being a space hole.
Being a space hole.
You don't want to be a space hole, exactly.
That could be our new tagline.
Don't be a space hole.
Don't be a space hole.
Teetering on yes, don't be a space hole.
And we're done here.
So 2 last tips that I 100% wish that I knew. If you listen to nothing else, these are gold, I'm telling you. Everybody out there, just write these down. Stop your car, drive safely, and then write these down. The first one is the night before you're leaving, step in to talk to guest services and figure out what you're going to do tomorrow and make a taxi cab or make whatever arrangements you want. One of the mistakes that we made is we didn't know what we were going to do. We had no idea this was an option. So we left that morning and kind of just wandered out and we said, hey, I guess we want a taxi to go to Disney Springs. And they said, oh, you didn't make that earlier? So we were actually the last people who left our particular voyage. In fact, I was the very last person to get on a cab because I didn't know that the night before I could have actually made the travel arrangements and make the arrangements the night before so that we could leave on time.
And is it true? I mean, I've heard this, that Disney will actually pay for transportation anywhere else on Disney property from Starcruiser.
Yeah, definitely check before you go because I have seen some variants on that. The Reddit forum, Galactic Starcruiser, is amazing. There's 2 or 3 great groups on Facebook where you can get the most up-to-the-minute news. But yeah, I still think that they are still paying for transportation to other parts on the resort on property.
Yeah, they definitely kick you out with some urgency on that last day. They've only got a couple hours between when one group leaves and the other group arrives, so they really have to make sure to make everyone has to be out by this time so they can prep for the next group.
And the final thing to talk about is something that we're still dealing with ourselves. If you have any opportunity to set up decompression after your voyage, set up a day at the park, set up a day at Disney Springs, you are going to be, first of all, you're going to be tired because you're going to be moving and going and going and going. Second of all, there's a concept in the LARPing community that's referred to as bleed. And I'm telling you, when you get off that ship, you will feel this sense of, wait, I'm in the real world now. I'm not on the starship. I'm not in space. I'm not with the crew members and the cast. It is a little jarring when you just go into reality after pretending for 40 some hours.
A little.
And for us, the 3 of us, we were still spinning for a solid 2 or 3 weeks after we went on the cruise.
Oh, yeah.
We wanted to get together to talk about it more and to actually get it set. So if you have a chance, at the end of your trip, just spend some time, get a massage, go to the next resort you're going to go to and just spend some time. If you just go get on a plane, it's a very jarring experience. So if you have the opportunity to decompress, I highly recommend it.
We're going to Kennedy Space Center after our next departure day, so that'll be a fun from fake space to real space.
Yeah.
That car ride, when we go from Starcruiser to KSC, I know that the person that we're going with is just going to be because that experience is just, it's why we're going a second time, I'm absolutely sure.
Oh, yeah.
So earlier in the episode, Christine, you mentioned that we have another giveaway. Can you give us some details about that?
Yes. So for our next giveaway, we have commissioned custom license plate frames that say, "My other ride is Galactic Starcruiser." I have one on my car. It looks fabulous. So I will post a photo of the custom frame. All you have to do on Instagram is like the photo and you'll be entered. We will give away the license plate frame 1 a week for the next 3 weeks. The winner will be posted on Wednesdays and I'll contact you directly with details.
So can I win one of those license plate frames, Christine?
No. No.
Heroes of the Halcyon, not eligible for a win.
Nice, I love it. So Christine, if people wanted to reach us on social media, how would they do so?
So along with following us on Instagram at Heroes of the Halcyon, you can also find us on Twitter at Halcyon_heroes and email us at heroesofthehalcyon@gmail.com.
Well, it looks like that'll do it for this week. And as always, it's been fun shooting the poodoo about all things Starcruiser with our friends out in podcast land. So until next episode, it's our honor. Let's raise our glasses to Buoy Tay!